Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. If you've just joined us, welcome to the third and final session of the ATM Global Halal Tourism Summit. If you're still with us, you've been with us from the start, thank you for your support and interest. We really do appreciate it. So our third session looks at how 3 non-Muslim destinations are successfully targeting and catering to the halal tourism sector. We're going to find out more about their strategies for attracting this market, from their provision of accommodation, facilities and services, to their marketing tactics and more. We'll also find out about the next steps they're going to take to look to attract that Muslim traveller of the future. So I'm delighted to say that joining us here today, we have, to my immediate left, Ed Fuller. He is the CEO of Orange County Visitors Association, California, who many of you will also know from his days at Marriott. Sitting next to him in the middle, we have Enver Dumani, who is the Chief Executive of Cape Town Tourism. And last but certainly not least, on the end, we have Mr. Kenji Ichimura, the Deputy Manager, Global Projects Group, Global Projects Department at Japan National Tourist Organization. That was a mouthful. So I'm going to come and have a chat with these guys over here. Thank you for joining us today. So what I'd like to do first is ask each of you, first of all, when you first identified that there was this big market here that you could start looking to reaching out to. So Ed, I'll start with you as you're next to me.
Well, having been coming to Dubai since 1990, I watched Dubai, the Emirates, the Middle East grow. And as I repurposed myself after leaving Marriott after the 22 years internationally, the first thing we did in Orange County was identify the Middle Eastern market as a target market for the California market as well as Orange County, pretty much on a luxury destination approach.
Brilliant. And was that really from, you say, your time here, really understanding the market and what the destination could offer?
It really helped to understand the potential of the market.
Right, yeah.
And at the same time, we're celebrating our 5th year in the market with an office.
Right.
And frankly, the U.S. ambassador called us up about 2 years ago and said, you know, you're the only representative from the United States with a city destination or county destination with offices here. And I said, they will come.
So you're the trailblazer in that respect.
That's
Good
right.
place to be, yeah. Enver, tell us more about, Cape Town and when, you identified this market as, the halal tourism market as something with potential for your destination.
Good afternoon and salam alaikum to everyone. So from a city perspective, we realized that the importance of the market, the size of the market, and I think the previous presentations illustrated that and continues to demonstrate its growth and its projection. But I think for us as a destination, we were dealing with seasonality issues, specifically in our winter period. And we started looking at, are there other markets out there that we could attract in the lower season? And our research started identifying certain factors in certain markets, and one of that markets was the Muslim traveler. And the research we then started with was to understand what is the needs of those markets. And then secondly, we needed to look at ourselves as a destination and saying, actually, do we have what it's required in order to attract that market? And that also required a bit more of self-reflection. And then a process ensued since then for us to become market ready.
Great. We'll come on to the strategy in a second. So, Mr. Kenji, tell us, in Japan, you're obviously in a region that is predominantly Muslim, so that market was on your doorstep. What made Japan, take the plunge and start really trying to target the Muslim travelers?
Well, basically Japan is in the process of getting a lot of foreign tourists to Japan. We have a 40 million inbound tourist target for 2020.
Wow.
So just going through the global market, as a result, we have been getting a lot of people from Southeast Asia, who's predominantly Muslim nations. We are being successful in those people. And so from that perspective, we looked into the Middle East, and found that for the luxury segment, we know that we can get into the Middle East market.
Okay, so interesting that the luxury was the thing you identified. Was that the same for you, Ed?
Yes.
It was very much luxury, yeah.
That was the focus.
The first.
Initially, it has expanded.
Okay, so let's talk about that first steps then. The market's identified, we're going to go for this market. What did you do first?
Well, initially, what aided us was the amount of airlift coming into Los Angeles. So that was first step that we didn't have to execute. And with that, but taking advantage of that, putting a team here in the Emirates, but focused on 5 of the countries in the Middle East, was the second step, both for sales, promotion, marketing, advertising to a very small degree, primarily public relations, was the first strategy. And then we have had a sales mission all but 1 year, bringing people into the market, and we've just completed with Visit California a major CEO mission here, so that we are continuing to try to build ground up, but focused on luxury, but expanding. And we are now focused on trying to get away from just the summer season for us and expand into other seasonal areas. So Orange County has 50 million visitors a year, about 5 million international, and right now the Middle East market is number 6. So you see we've grown from virtually more than 10 to 6 over a 5-year period.
Wow, that's big.
Yes.
And what have you done in destination to make sure, you know, that when visitors from this region, predominantly GCC families, I guess we're talking about, obviously Muslim families, what have you done to make sure the industry there was ready so they understood the cultural nuances, etc.?
Well, actually, we came to the Sheikh Mohammed Cultural Center and developed a training film with the Cultural Center for our community, which we have run for 3 years in the community, training the retailers, focused specifically right down to the police departments, to understand the culture, the food, and the various aspects of the experience. And of course, the hotels are the ones that are the quickest to pick up the training film and use it. It touches on the sensitivities that our guests have and making sure that our people are especially I'd say sensitive, but more importantly, respectful of another culture.
Sure.
We've done the same for Chinese, and we're working on Japanese now, but this was critical for our market.
Fantastic. And it was very well received, obviously.
Oh, absolutely, and continues to be rerun as turnover occurs in industry.
Sure, brilliant. And Enver, what were your first steps? Because I think you looked at what you had in the destination, didn't you?
Yeah, so what we did is, beyond the research, we realized that we needed to ask the industry whether they were interested in this market. And that's where we started with surveys, workshops. And to no surprise, everybody understood the size of the market, the opportunity. But what was even more interesting was the fact that there was a lot of misperceptions, a lack of understanding, even the terminology between what we were even debating earlier on, halal-friendly, Muslim-friendly. And those things are all perceived barriers to accessing this market. And what we then embarked on was saying, well, if we need to understand, we need to create more awareness and education around the cultural stuff. And we then embarked on working with Crescent Rating to start hosting more workshops. We created a glossary and terms of reference to demystify the culture and the opportunity. And then we also looked at doing surveys of what does that traveler want and that what we do we have, and can we match that? And interesting enough, the 2 things we found as a non-OIC destination was the number 1 thing was food. Halal food is most critical, followed by prayer. And when we looked at ourselves as the destination, we realized that, you know, a quarter of our population is Muslim. It's part of the fabric of the city, who we are. We've got over 162 mosques around the city. Again, we've got all the assets, but what we haven't done is package that for a traveler that was looking for that all the time, because we've traditionally sold the destination as a European destination.
Yes, yeah.
So I think, again, as part of the marketing organization's efforts, it's about understanding what does the market want, what do we have to offer, and can we find the matching and product and packaging of that to sell what we already have to a newer audience.
Sure. And I guess for, well, Ed was saying you're very much looking at the Gulf market, but for you, Enver, it's really the global Muslim community you're looking at. So were there anything of interest that came up there? I mean, we've talked about the differences between how it's termed in different places and what people want, but is it really people still looking for the same things no matter where in the world they come from?
I think when you look at travelers, we're all human and we all have the same needs and wants, hierarchy of needs. You know, whether safety about the destination, right to food, through to the esoteric stuff that you want. But I think then the religious, the cultural aspects get layered over that. And what we said as a destination is we want to create a human connection, always. And what we looked at and saying, well, if a quarter of the world's population is Muslim, that means there are Muslims in our key source markets. There's only 3% of Muslim population in the Middle East. That means there's 97% out there of opportunity. Everybody wants to come into the Middle East, and we understand that. But what we're saying is that in all my key source markets, Germany, US, Europe, Asia, they understand that they know Cape Town through a certain lens. What I have is I've got direct flights to those markets, so the airlift is there. But what I need to do is tell the Muslim in the US, in Europe, here's the reason why I am now more applicable to you, because I've never sold myself to you in that way. And that's what we're looking at.
Okay, brilliant. Now, Mr. Kenji, Japan's made a great success of attracting the Muslim travel market. Can you tell me what those success factors have been? I mean, I think you've done quite a lot on the accreditation side for food, for example. Is that correct?
Okay, we're very fortunate that our private sector is really keen on getting the Muslim people to Japan. So as a government, of course, we have set out a standard of how we can welcome the Muslim people. Very basic, very basic. We have to start from how the cultures are and how we should be respectful for those community. That's only started a few years back, so it's really early in the stage, but our private sector, with the knowledge and the needs and understanding of the importance of the Muslim community coming to Japan, has been actively working to make Muslim-friendly restaurant guides and those kind of, to prepare the country to accept those people. So we are very fortunate. We are working with the private sector.
I was going to say, so that came from you. You're the one that spearheaded it, the tourism organisation.
Yes.
And how did you go about education and, you know, telling the industry about what was required?
Okay, JNTO is basically for promotion. So our government is basically, there's a place in our government who is actually preparing everything for the overseas people to come. So those people, in coordination with JNTO, exchanging information to make sure that is going. And JNTO, as a promotion organization, is promoting overseas that we are ready to welcome the Muslim people.
Okay, brilliant. Well, this kind of brings us on to next step. So you've all been really successful to date. How are you now going to elevate this and take it to the next level? And what are your goals, Ed?
Well, the major theme that we have is all dreams are welcome when you come to California. And we are studying very carefully the age change in the Muslim market. Because quite frankly, interests were not as great for whale watching with the original visitors.
Right.
And now you find more and more people. And I have a distinct advantage having Disneyland as my market. And so we are also focused on families as a major target. And we're trying to study what the family wants and how the family approaches different activities, i.e. sometimes the family splits away and the children go this way and the family goes there. And the third category is really, we have two shopping venues, Fashion Island and the Spectrum, that are exterior, which is not a problem. Even the warmest day in Orange County is a comfortable, cool day. And so we find that the Middle East traveler in particular may go shopping, but enjoys the various restaurants and the coffee houses in these shopping areas. So we provide transportation to take the goods back to the hotel and allow them to enjoy the atmosphere and meeting their friends in that environment. So we're really trying to expand in the family market. We're looking at different venues and the advantages of them. And we're really focused on trying to understand the age differences of the traveler as we're getting young travelers, by that I mean relative to my age, in the 20s and 30s coming over for their first trip.
And what kind of things are they looking to do?
Well, they're looking for a little more activity they're obviously enjoying the food, which is a major priority for us. And we've identified 11 halal friendly restaurants in the market.
Yeah.
But they are also after some of our seafood because we're a coastal community with 42 miles of beach. And they are looking to do things like go whale watching, and they're looking to take a Duffy boat out and do some of the exciting hands-on things you can do in the market.
And I think, have you launched a new guide here at ATM, is that right? A halal restaurant guide?
Yes, we are putting that out specifically in this new summer market coming up.
Brilliant. So that will be really handy, so people will know
Absolutely.
where to go, what to do. Enver, what's the next steps for Cape Town then?
So I think similar to Ed.
Mike, please.
So I think similar to Ed, we're also looking at producing a visitor's guide to assist for orientation as well as finding a way around the destination. I think tech tools like augmented reality, geolocation are important, and we're beginning to see more of that coming through. And then, of course, rating and accreditation of products. That's important to give people the assurance that the product they are experiencing meets their needs. And for us, there isn't a debate whether it's halal or halal friendly. It's halal.
Yeah.
And especially when it comes to food, because you cannot debate that. It's haram
No,
or it's not.
with food you can't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think for us as a non-OIC destination, it's about understanding that we are still a unique destination that has multiple things to offer, and that speaks to any tourist, irrespective of your religious or cultural beliefs. And I think that's the important thing, is also that because there's almost 1 million Muslims in Cape Town, we also understand that any traveler wants to hang out where the locals hang out and do what the locals do. So it's something that we will continue to push in our marketing, but making sure that we can tell an audience out there that we have what you want and you need without having to be concerned about some of the religious concerns.
Okay, great. Mr. Kenji, can you tell us more about what your next steps are? You know, how are you going to really get this market to the next level and push those numbers up?
Before I was being very general, globally, we were talking about the Muslim community as a whole. But the next step, I'm really excited to share with you that JNTO will have an office, is preparing to have an office in a few years' time in Dubai, to have the center of action to get the Middle Eastern Muslim people over. So we'll have a representative office probably set out for this year. Last year, for this step, we did an internal B2C survey to try to understand what the Middle Eastern Muslim communities are. So it is still a mystery, but we are starting to understand that it is very unique. The Middle Eastern Muslim community is very unique. They love nature, which we have in bundles. So those kind of keywords are the things that we want to really promote as a unique destination. Because anything you want, we have. So just the method and technique of how we can promote it. That's our next
And
step.
what did you find? What were the key things that this market was looking for?
This market, interesting thing is the market was really concerned about safety before coming to Japan. So the safety issue was very high. So we were really surprised to know that. People coming to Japan, we presumed that Japan is safe. But a lot of people, like 60% of people, say they're really concerned about the safety of the travel. But once they came, and the safety issue was gone. So those kind of key factors is the kind of promotion that we should go for, sending out messages that Japan is safe. That's one key thing that I found
So
really
that would be
interesting.
one thing you'll be pushing through in your marketing.
Yes, basic knowledge of what we are in Japan.
Interesting. I like it. So, talking about source markets, any source markets in particular, Enver, you know, aside from the Middle East, any interesting trends you've noticed there?
Well, I think for us, again, if a quarter of the world's population is Muslim, you're guaranteed that Muslims are in your key source markets.
Yeah.
So I think, again, going back to the fact that only 3% of the world's Muslim population is in the Middle East. It's the Red Ocean. Everybody's fighting in that space.
Yeah, yeah.
And for us, it's saying, you know what, we don't need to fight in a space when we've got an audience out there that has already got direct access through air access into the destination. They understand enough about the destination. But what we are doing now is just giving them another reason to visit and to stay longer. Another market for us that is interesting is North Africa.
Okay.
30% of the Muslim population globally is in North Africa.
Right.
So I think, again, as being part of the African continent, we
Yes,
have a connection.
that's interesting.
So if you're looking at markets, for us, it's our existing key source markets, but more importantly, also making sure we have a real African connection in the experiences of what we sell.
Because I read something recently about how the headline was, why don't Africans visit other African countries? Is that a thing? Or is it just a sensationalist headline?
I think a bit of both. I think the fact that if you look at global marketing, other destinations have been there for years and have marketed the destination as aspirational. And most of the African continents are still kind of getting out to the starting blocks. For a destination like South Africa and Cape Town in particular, I think we've been in the market for quite a long time, marketing the destination, using World Cups as catalysts for, again, telling a different narrative. And I think for us as the African continent, it's part of our journey. We are getting there, and I think one of the main tools we have is social media and technology.
Just going to come on to that.
Which becomes
Yeah.
a leveler.
Yeah.
So we can actually penetrate and target markets in a smarter way without having kind of the extensive dollar budgets that other destinations have.
Interesting you talk about social media. We heard a lot about it in the last session. I'd be quite interested to hear how within your marketing strategies, how you're using social media more and influencers and bloggers, because it is the thing these days. Ed, is that something you're looking at?
So we just finished an internal panel with some of the social media executives here in the market. It's evident to me that unlike if you were in the middle of China or in the middle of the United States, where social media is dominant and most print has moved totally over to social
Sure.
media, the Middle East has not moved to that quick a pace. And I would call this more of a transitional
Sure.
market. However, we do know that there are similar problems and challenges of getting your message across. Video is still the most valuable social media device. Pictures that can really be seen and understood are critical, and that the retention rate of most humans is probably a little less than a goldfish, is currently running about 6 seconds versus the goldfish at 8. So you've got to get your message out in a shorter, faster form to try to capture those people. That's kind of a global situation.
It is.
And so while this market evolves, I'm confident it'll evolve even more in a progressive way than even the rest of the
I
world.
think so too. Mr. Kenji, I mean, obviously you are in Asia where social media is huge. Everyone's on messenger apps. It's a big thing. Again, how are you using social media to kind of influence the Muslim travel market?
Okay, as a whole, it's totally the same. Social media is very important. Influencer, word of mouth, everything's so important. We understand that. But for the Middle Eastern community, we still think the business travel agency information is very important. We feel that it's like Japan a few years back, where all the travel agents giving information to the customers. So that's why we're here. So this B2B is very important, we think. And of course, SNS is very important for Japanese promotion.
kind of got to attack it all angles, really.
Yes,
Trade,
yes.
social media.
Yes, so true, so true.
Okay, well, I think we can just take a couple of questions from the audience. Do we have any questions for our panelists here today? Question at the front here, and a couple here. Right, we'll go 1, 2, 3.
I'm Irfan from Irhal, which is an Islamic travel app. I have a comment first for Cape Town. One of the things mentioned in the Quran is about witnessing two oceans meeting and not meeting. When you go on top of Table Mountain in Cape Town, you can actually see the distinction between the Atlantic and the Indian Ocean. That's something which can be promoted by you to attract more Muslim travelers
Great idea.
to Cape Town.
Thank you.
But now talking about Japan, I've been following Japan in terms of its alignment with becoming more halal friendly or Muslim friendly, and in social media, I mean, there's a bunch of like Twitter accounts like Halal Media Japan. They talk about new innovation, new things opening, new halal restaurants opening. You've made prayer rooms available in Tokyo, Osaka. You have halal food available there, but not everyone is aware of it here.
Yes.
And I think it's important to convey that message across to the market. I know that Malaysia and Indonesia are close to you, and a lot of those people do travel to Japan. But the Middle East, it's still something where Japan is not in the radar, that people don't want to really, they don't know enough about it to want to go there. And the fact that you have already invested in providing halal food and restaurants, having halal, halal facilities like prayer rooms and stuff, even in shopping malls. That is something I think is admirable, but needs to be communicated. I'll just close by adding one more example, where I was traveling to Seoul, and at the Korean Air counter, I saw a booklet about halal restaurants in Seoul. So I think you need to be more proactive and provide your customers with more information. But that's at the final step when I've already decided to go to a city. But you need to do it before that to encourage more and more Muslim travelers to travel to Japan. With the Olympics coming up, I'm sure you're sort of aiming at doing that.
Thank you so much for your advice.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Really, really good advice there, I think. Cool. Right, do we have a question? We have a question here, question there, then we'll wrap up.
Thank you. My name is Imtiaz Muqbil from Travel Impact Newswire in Bangkok. My question is to Mr. Fuller. Mr. Fuller, Ms. Kenji-san just mentioned the importance of the safety and security factor in terms of the priorities for Muslim travelers. Your country has a serious image problem when it comes to the whole relationship with the Islamic world, all the way from visa applications to racial profiling to Islamophobia to people getting shot in mosques and all kinds of stuff. Have you all actually done some serious assessment of the business lost? I'm sure many Muslims are continuing to travel to the United States, but all these factors, have you done an assessment of how much lost business you'll have suffered over the years, and what are you planning to do about it?
So much to your surprise, maybe, actually our visitors are increasing, not decreasing, whereas some of the problems you articulate are obviously very much in the news, often over-reported, and highly, what I will say, volatile. But you cannot argue with some of the incidents that you indicated. Quite frankly, my little corner of the world happens to be listed as one of the safest places in the United States. And we do talk about safety when we're talking about visitors coming to Orange County in that area, because there is always a concern, no matter where you travel, that safety is first and the foremost in anybody's mind. So I would say that we might have a little over coverage on the media, but in reality, as I said, our numbers have gone from 8 to 6 on visitors from the Middle East, and we're quite excited. We believe this is going to be our best year yet, based on the numbers the hotels are reporting.
Great, thanks, Ed. One last question we have, I think.
Hello, thank you. My name is Majid Tsai from Chinese Muslim Association in Taiwan. I have 2 questions to Sir from Japan and Captain. As the Captain, you mentioned they have a quarter of Muslim population in local. Can you share the experience? Have you used or to reach those local Muslim community to reach or to help in the Muslim tourism industry promotion, and how will it do? And the second question with Mr. Kenji, that as we know that some of Muslims, they want to, of course, traveling to Asia country like Japan, Korea, Taiwan, want to eat some local food. But of course, we know that some sushi, which is undercooked fish, that some Muslims, they are not to eat, as well as the ramen, which is come from the pork. So if they ask about such questions, how to solve those questions and still to attract those people to visit Japan. Thank you.
Mr. Kenji? Oh, sorry. Okay.
So I think from your question around the importance of community and its access into tourism, it's part of our core foundation, is that as a destination, we don't look at just the marketing of it. It's about destination management. So what we found is that tourism is actually a catalyst and allows us to allow communities to become part of a bigger tourism economy. And we work with Muslim communities across Cape Town. They were actually one of the first people we actually engaged with in our research process to ask them, what do you have? You know, are we interested in that market? And then secondly, how can you help some of the traditional hotels, restaurants to understand and adapt to this changing market? So for us, it's actually core part of our research as well as the implementation program going forward.
Great. Quickly, Mr. Kenji, about food. What do you do to kind of educate both, I guess, the restaurants and Muslim travelers?
Okay. Like I mentioned before, we are very fortunate our private sector is working really hard to accept those Muslim-friendly restaurants, to increase those numbers. And as you mentioned, ramens, exactly, there are pork and normal ramen, soup and actual things, but we do have halal ramens, and they are actually promoting themselves really strongly. And we do have a Japan booth today for the ATM from the halal ramen place as well. So as a JNTO, we want to make sure that we want to be transparent. We don't want to say something that we're not. So we are on a path to be better, but we are working hard to get those information out to the public, make sure that we don't tell them something different.
Sure, great. Well, I think it'd be great to wrap this up. What I'd like to ask each panellist is what would be their advice to other destinations looking to target this market? If they should do one thing, what would it be? You can do it in like 2 sentences, that would be great. Ed?
So first is understand the market. And there are complexities. Kuwait is different than the UAE, and so is Saudi. And understanding the nuances of the market are as critical as anything else. So it's, they always say in marketing, understand your customer, but if you don't understand the culture, the history, and go into real depth, you really don't understand the market.
Research. Enver.
Well, I think ours is simple. Market readiness before marketing. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, Mr. Kenji?
Okay, for Japan, we are a non-Muslim nation, so our suggestion is we cannot be a Muslim nation. So putting that in mind, go for satisfaction. So work hard, survey and see how the Muslim people are feeling or how they feel about the destination and work for that KPI.
So really, it comes down to understanding the market, doesn't it? Yeah,
Yes.
as we said. Well, that's been fantastic. Please, will you give our panelists a big round of applause? They've been fantastic.